So our next speaker is mee-ah, and mee-ah is transfemme and non-binary, living with BPD, autism, and ADHD. In the past, they worked as a professional mechanical engineer, consulting on construction projects across Western Canada. After a brief career in fine arts in Halifax, they found work as a community drug checking technician at Insite in Vancouver's downtown east side. Now they live in Victoria, quietly working to support the drug checking programs across BC for the BC Centre of Substance Use. They garden compulsively with a focus on vegetables and pollinator flowers. You may find mee-ah riding a bicycle with their partner on a dodgeball court or happily tinkering in their workshop. So welcome, and your topic today is BPD and neurodivergence, and I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Bailey.
You're welcome.
So I want to tell you about my garden. See, I love my garden. I love seeing the plants grow and building trellises and such. But you see, something was digging holes in my garden. At first, I did nothing, but I noticed that whatever it was after worms. And I figured it must be rats. Then the rats dug up my strawberries. They gotta die. They have to die now. So I went to war with the rats. I put traps everywhere. The digging stopped, but then it returned with a vengeance. Such huge holes these rats were digging in my garden. My neighbor let me know that it's probably raccoons. Of course it's raccoons. How could I be so foolish? How could I mistake raccoons for rats? Now I'm at war with raccoons. They've destroyed half my garden. I'm devastated. I am beyond devastated. But I rally. I grind up chili peppers, garlic, and rosemary, and I mutter to myself while I'm spreading it around my garden, muttering about these goddamn raccoons while I'm spraying vinegar on my fences. Something ancient in me was triggered, and I was off. My partner told me that I was causing problems in the household with how angry I was. I told him that he didn't understand that these raccoons were destroying everything I had built. The digging stopped. I rejoiced. But then disaster strikes again. I rage. My partner sits me down and I flip out over these fucking raccoons. He tells me to get a goddamn grip and go for a walk. Once I'm not blinded with rage, I see that there's a huge hole in the fence. There's branches that lay across the fence that serve as a walking path. The beds aren't covered with netting that would actually deter them. My efforts had been ineffective because I had been so angry, unable to think. I came to realize that there is no winning here, that tomorrow I'll probably have crows trying to eat my raspberries, that other growers probably have a million ways to deter pests, and I'm still just learning. The rage and suffering are all my own doing. The raccoons are a neutral force just trying to eat. I make peace with the struggle. I mostly wanted to talk about my garden here, but in this tortured metaphor, I liken the raccoons and rats and the crows to the latest diagnoses that I've had to accept and work with, the roadblocks, dead ends, and highs and lows of mental health work. Hi, I'm mee-ah. Hello, I use they, them pronouns. I'm 33. As Bailey said with the bio that I sent them, I work for the BC Centre on Substance Use. I'm quite proud of a technical manual that I just published covering all the substances one needs to know as a new drug checking technician. As an artist, I'm a Pisankara. I humbly consider myself a knowledge keeper of the ancient traditions that go back millennia. And yeah, before that, I was an engineer. I still have the ring. I still have the attitude. I'm fiercely polyamorous, and I happen to be trans. I say all of this so I can feel bolstered as I dive into the despair that I have felt over my life and the struggles I've had to overcome. I'm very activated right now, and I will do my best to keep it together. So, what do I struggle with? I struggle with generalized anxiety, depression, BPD, autism, ADHD, IBS, panic disorder, suicidality, and I've been misdiagnosed with just as many conditions along the way. Trying to separate out the experiences is difficult. Autism, ADHD, and BPD are very difficult to tell apart, and many of these things trigger each other. Compounding this is the fact that I don't feel body signals very well. Hunger, tiredness, thirst, pain, discomfort are all felt in different and often misleading ways than what is typical. I believe this is a symptom of autism, but it certainly makes traditional methods difficult to execute. This, coupled with a rich inner world, has led me down a lot of dead ends as I try to match theories to the symptoms. I don't know what it's like to just have BPD or autism. My story is therefore representative of only my unique intersection, and it would be disingenuous for me to try and generalize about these experiences. I don't even know if I've found the bottom of my rabbit hole, if you will. Given the topic of the day's BPD, I chose to focus on that for the most part. My experience with BPD appears to fall under the framework of secondary structural dissociation. Therefore, I have mental partitions that are devoted to handling a single emotion or purpose and are relatively fixed in how they operate. Each has their own skill set, memory access, purpose, goals, and origin. I have 8 major parts that I have identified, along with other minor ones that I won't get into. Start with I have the attached part. It's a toddler in me that needs comfort and safety. The freeze and fawn part, or the child that couldn't handle corporal punishment and thought they could maybe negotiate their way out of it. We have the shame part. Couldn't handle the religious trauma that I had growing up. I really wanted to be religious and I really wasn't. I have the jester part, which is my favorite. It's the tween without any friends and desperately trying to make connections using any means possible. We have the anger part, the furious adolescent who could not believe that they could do this to me and they want to get even. The flight part, which came somewhat afterwards, that would rather move away than get even, actually. And of course, we have the despair part, the part that is entirely devoted to making me feel suicidal. That is all that it does. It is brutal. It is my least favorite part. When their respective purposes triggered, each tries to keep me safe in their own way. At first, it feels like a drop in cognitive capacity. My adult self is diminished, my vocal patterns and posture will change, and I become dissociated with my surroundings and feel that I am not in full control of my actions or words. My parts can work together, against each other, or ignore each other. In conversation, they all tumble out one after another. This produces disjointed conversation where I can say contradictory statements, each feeling true from one instant to the next. My parts often disapprove of what the others or me have to say and will voice their opinion loudly. If I ignore their opinions, my parts will corrode memories, manipulate perception, or hamstring me to be heard. And because multiple parts can be active at any given time, I sometimes have the curious sensation of being a backseat driver to multiple warring parties that have a plurality over my body. And they don't all have the same set of cards in their deck. All of my parts have different demeanors, cadence of speech, vocabulary, and body language. Freeze, for instance, doesn't know how to cook. They're too young for that. I have food organized by how many steps it takes to get out of storage and eat it. There's always nuts as a 1-step item, soup as a 2-step item, and so on. Because my parts have different physical abilities, one sign I am losing control of one of my parts is a lack of coordination, strength, or ability. For example, my throw in dodgeball becomes noticeably erratic and my reaction time is badly impaired when a part starts to take hold. The parts all have selective memories. I am regularly corrected in arguments where I've forgotten something crucial. This is perceived as manipulative, as the forgotten fact is usually very convenient to my side of the story. I am unable to access happy memories or feelings when despair is in strong effect. This can take several hours to lift. The longest was a day and a half, where I quietly sobbed, feeling completely insane. When a part releases its grip, I can feel it tangibly and suddenly. Muscles loosen, my demeanor changes, and the way I speak will be different. I often will be screaming, crying, and thrashing, and then suddenly it stops and I recover, seemingly totally okay. This can be extremely jarring for an outside observer and lends to my internal feeling that I am somehow faking these truly disturbing physical symptoms. Speaking of symptoms, I can speak to each of the diagnostic criteria for BPD, the first one being frantic efforts to avoid real or abandonment. Let me tell you a story about how my compulsions show up. When I started dating my current live-in partner, it came up in pillow talk that a trip would be fun. A pie-in-the-sky goal of biking across Japan over the course of 3 months in 3 years' time came up. I was deeply disabled at this point, and I was hardly fending for myself. So this became the payoff to the relationship, a way to keep my partner in my life. As time went on, I became convinced that I would likely succumb to suicide should my partner break up with me. So the trip had to happen, or I would die. This was very motivating. I had to complete the tasks of living in the same city, getting my health sorted out, get a job to pay for myself, and crucially, become a long distance cyclist to make this goal happen. All along, my partner just didn't want to pop my bubble since I was doing healthy activities. He honestly didn't think the trip would happen until we were already on the plane. So I don't know if 4,000 kilometers of biking and Nihongo ga Skoshi Hanashimasu qualifies as frantic efforts, but I did do it. The next symptom, a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationship characterized by alternating extremes of idealization and devaluation. So in my life, relationship is over anytime there is wrong that has occurred. Totally over. It doesn't matter the length of it. If anything bad has happened, the floor drops out from under it. I have a pattern of creating elaborate stories that feel intensely true to me in the moment and also to the people around me. I can build very strong cases against close supports. I hallucinate reactions and become stuck on small wrongs. I try to notice this obsessive case building, which can manifest as pages of writings of wrongdoings and elaborate stories of how someone has always been abusive to me. If I'm able to notice this, I can indicate that I am unwell and try to unwind this vicious cycle, but the noticing is crucial. Next symptoms, unstable self-image or sense of self. I have a very bizarre sense of identity. It's more of an absence of identity than anything. I am agender. I have never felt any feelings of gender at all. However, I have a strong compulsion to have masculine mannerisms and a very feminine outward appearance. This is confusing to most, myself included. However, if anything has been persistent, it has been this state of affairs. I had a sense as a child that people were a series of masks and that there was nothing underneath. I didn't think that the self was a thing. I didn't think there was anything there. I thought people were just playing a part. And to an extent, I still do. I have difficulties understanding the difference between internal and external cues and where the boundary might be. And to be honest, I have abandoned the train of thought of trying to solve the question of self, as it has produced only more questions as I look at an empty frame where my sense of self should be. I accept the frame as it is and I move on. The next symptom is impulsivity in at least two areas that are potentially self-damaging. For me, historically, this has been eating and drugs. Due to the muscle twitching that happens, I'm technically doing calisthenics all day long, isometric exercises, if you will. So I never gain weight, and my muscle tone is always far greater than it should be. But I've ate myself into real problems in the past. A great example I have is eating chewy candies for 3 days straight, and I landed up in a hospital with an intestinal blockage. I was 23, not a child. That was embarrassing in engineering school. Now I have to do the FODMAP diet to avoid IBS symptoms, which is a real chore. And I still fall off the rocker and binge eat myself into a hyperglycemic burnout state. Sour candies are a great way to cope with uncomfortable feelings. I did drugs to cope with feeling like my life was a complete fraud. I felt a malaise, a deep sense of anger and discontentment, and I strove to reach something that I could tap into when I was high. I was a little embarrassed when I realized that feeling was simply happiness. Doing LSD gave me a glimpse of many of the issues I could not see plainly in my life. A career that didn't drive me, a body I didn't recognize, a relationship that didn't hold me, and a shame held deep within. I wasn't ready for this revelation about so much of my life, so I turned to other substances to numb out these truths. I had good times, but I buried too many friends doing it. After spending my 25th birthday in the emergency room waiting to see if my friend was going to die from the drug-induced seizure she had in the back of my car, I got my act together. Now, drugs are a strictly regulated pastime that I've turned into a tidy career. I use them as a treat for special occasions or to engage in therapeutic work. The next symptom, self-injurious behavior. See the above, naturally. I primarily focus my anger inwards, quietly destroying my self-esteem, self-image, and self-worth. Suicidal behavior and thoughts. For 3 months, I was filled to the brim with a strong desire to kill myself. I still feel it from time to time whenever things get rough. I found the feelings intensely disturbing and shameful. I tried to get some help, but to be honest, the crisis resources I had available to me at the time made me feel so much worse that I pretended I was better just to get them to leave me alone. I found peace with suicide by considering it carefully, holding it as a viable option to my situation, eventually feeling quite neutral to the thought. I saw it as it was, an exit path, a way to get better, which is what I wanted in the first place. When I felt I had hit the very bottom of my reality, that I could just take a single step to the side and oblivion, that's when I made my choice. And it became my new foundation in life. I began therapy and started to get better because I've been to the edge of that cliff and I said no. I consider this a very inspirational story, but most people find it too dark and I don't share it often. The next symptom, difficulty regulating mood and emotions. I experience vicious bouts of emotion when triggered. My body flushes, my ears ring, my temperature flares. I have cognitive slowdown. I'm foggy, confused, and often lost. My speaking changes, is impaired or stops completely. My muscles involuntarily clench and twitch. I have chronic pain from all this muscle tension, which sometimes injures my body muscles, my jaw, and teeth. I have a thrashing of limbs, moaning, gasping, and choking. And this is all very disturbing to anyone who sees any part of it. It is humiliating not being able to explain or console people who are panicking as it appears I'm in great danger. On the flip side, I experience massive highs, bursting with giggles, laughter, uncontrollable movements of glee, far beyond what was normal earlier in life. As a result, I have an amazing time at parties and festivals, sometimes too good of a time. The next symptom, chronic feelings of emptiness. Medications helped a lot with these. I try to use these feelings as a cue to resource. I reach out to friends and family and ask them to tell me about their day, about anything. Despair is usually waiting if I engage with these feelings. I tie these feelings to a tongue-in-cheek personal philosophy of absurdism, where I poke fun at my own despair. I once had a doctor prescribe me a couple of beers with friends one time because I was such a buzzkill in his office. I haven't forgotten that. That play is crucial to combating emptiness. Next symptom is inappropriate, intense reactions of anger or difficulties controlling anger. I have a lot of outbursts at people, especially for not following the rules. That's a big one for me. I like to yell at people over unreturned shopping carts. That's a great one. It's a really easy one to pick on people about. It makes my partner extremely uncomfortable. Last one is feeling disconnected from surroundings. I live with some level of dissociation most of the time, and I have learned to just roll with it. Sometimes I can warp back into reality after some activity or engagement. I don't really remember how I got there, and I feel like I'm operating a fleshy mech suit, but it works. Other times it doesn't, and I lose muscle tone and the ability to maintain my voice and posture. Those times I need to go home. Going to sleep usually resets this. So, switching gears, how did this all start? What appears to be genetic for me is being autistic, highly sensitive, ADHD, asthmatic, a sweat disorder, and gut problems. If I had to point the finger at contributing factors to childhood trauma, I would say a lowered threshold to trauma due to the highest sensitivity would be a primary factor. A history of corporal punishment in my family, much to my parents' regret. A brother who brutally picked on me and frankly is struggling just as much as I am. And the regular emergency visits due to asthmatic attacks. I would imagine that the very real threat of death from the seemingly random failures of my airways, coupled with the sometimes being beaten by my parents, would produce the necessary dissociative split to create the pattern that has persisted to today. But that's just a story. It doesn't really matter. But if I had to guess, Later on, other events that created more parts along the way that I've come to identify. We have the aforementioned religious trauma, hiding my shame and trying to accept that I was likely damned. It's tough as a 9-year-old. Isolation from not getting along with kids my age. Did not understand social cues. Didn't really get it. More brutality between me and my brothers. We never really grew out of it. We just moved away from each other. Being unheard by my parents in times of great distress. There's a lot of stiff upper lip. Not sure if it helped all the time. Puberty, all of it, just all of it. And in high school, the death of a close friend due to stabbing. And then another death in university of a partner due to alcohol toxicity. I blame myself for this as the death was preventable, but I didn't know the signs. This is what really started the worst of my symptoms. Then transition, and later my full mental collapse. How did it feel to slip into disability? I felt foggy from the age of 12 onwards and turned to distractions like Game Boy and masturbation to help cope with the increasing negative feelings. It felt very much like a low-grade rage that was percolating deep below the surface. With each traumatic event, the foggy feelings increased, taking more of my ability with it. By the end of university, I was spending 100% of my time working to try and eke out 20% of what I could really produce. The ensuing deep depression after my partner's death brought personality changes, despair, and a lack of desire to do anything. I smooth talked my way into jobs and forced myself to do them because that's what I was trained to do. I had good results. I was proud of my work, but it was slowly killing me. I started to notice body heat issues as well as a cognitive slowdown after working for some time. It seemed like my ability to work was being impaired somehow, and I didn't know why. Troubles at work became troubles at home, where I couldn't get chores done, I couldn't keep up with social engagements, I couldn't maintain connections. It felt like walls closing in around me, shrinking my life to a very small circle. I was a very social person, with a huge network, and by my lowest point, I had lost most of my connections. This is when I felt desperate enough to take the risk of hormones. Life felt gray and pointless. The risk of social upheaval was never going to be less than right then. Well, the hormones felt like a perfect fit, and I was immediately rewarded with a feeling like I had done something crucial to my future happiness. Unfortunately, my emotional state rapidly deteriorated. One day I was working on a life safety system for an apartment building and realized I couldn't make my hands do the right actions anymore to ensure the building was made safely. I immediately informed my supervisor and I was put on leave. I spiraled out of control until I was unable to properly feed myself and was rolling from one panic attack to another. They would rise and fall over the course of hours. I can remember my partner at the time being regularly called to my house to help stop my thrashing that had been going on for 3 or 4 hours at a time. I regularly would and still do become injured in these events. I became agoraphobic. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't get groceries. I couldn't work, and I lost hope. I couldn't focus on anything more than a half hour or so before my body would lose functionality. This is when I became deeply suicidal as I reasoned that it was just a matter of time before my housing situation would fail me and the rest would come soon after. So why didn't anything get caught? Boys are taught to accomplish things. I did. I got great grades. That's all anyone cared about. Once I accused my fourth grade teacher of teaching a third grade curriculum. I was a real fun kid sometimes. As a teenager, I was sullen, angry, and withdrawn, as if that's anything new. My schools were more than happy to graduate me with honors and be done with my disruptive presence. Frankly, the autistic traits that I find so obvious now are just common in my father's family and they don't seem out of place. I think people in the past just dealt with it through anger, frustration, and probably drinking. I'm the first person in my family to identify these traits. My mom just thought it was the German blood in the family. I repressed these feelings of being trans because I correctly surmised at the age of 5 that these feelings were dangerous. I couldn't bring any of this stuff up. Well, they weren't to be talked about at the time. They surfaced at 17, 20, 23 before finally unwinding at 26 and I could start transitioning. For my job, I was good at engineering. I was miserable, but I was really good at it. I'm really good at a lot of things, but I was never taught to decide if I felt happy about it. Honestly, did not think there was anything wrong with me. I took in the message to repress my feelings really well, and I did a great job of it. Honestly, I had a lot of good times, and that was because I could stuff my feelings down. I didn't think there was anything to catch until I couldn't do my job anymore. That deeply held conviction that a person is only as valuable as their function was the core piece holding me back from finally changing my life for the better. So what did I try? I obsessively tried to find any scraps of writing that would help to piece together a story of what the hell was happening to me. I was very confused, and I spent months writing, trying to piece together the fragmented mind states, feelings, compulsions I was suffering under. I volunteered at an arts drop-in center to try and feel a little useful, even though I couldn't make it through a 4-hour shift most of the time. I moved to Halifax to go to art school. I felt like I had to do something. I really got into rollerblading there and learned how much intense physical exercise could help manage things. I hid things well enough that my current live-in partner got attached to me, who has been absolutely crucial to my recovery. He took care of me for so long. He held my hand while I thrashed in agony. He listened to my bullshit theories. He made sure I ate. I don't know if I would be alive without him. I went through bottom surgery and dealt with the vast trauma that caused. I felt pain beyond what I could imagine. It helped me to understand just what I was willing to withstand to get what I needed to make life better. I would do it again. The Japan trip was arguably the best thing I could attach to, as it motivated me to get better in so many areas. I don't regret that compulsion at all. And of course, I tried a lot of therapists, a lot. I learned how to give my opening speech very well and say what I needed in a therapist. So let's talk about what really helps me right now. I grew up in an environment that found treatment to be an extremely unsavory endeavor, and I only began treatment after brushing with suicide. I fired half a dozen therapists because they had no framework to deal with me. It's fruitless work that left me feeling humiliated over and over and over by pouring my heart out and being responded to with confusion. Therapists would tell me that what I was saying contradicted what I had said in the previous conversation, and that I couldn't hold multiple contradictory viewpoints at the same time and think they're all true. They thought this would be helpful. However, it was just making me feel completely crazy because the viewpoints all felt totally true within the context that I was experiencing them. But of all the clinicians, psychiatrists, therapists, and cranks I spoke to, the very clever therapist by the name of Claire Sessoms was the first to pick up on my reality and help me to unravel it. My partner found them and got me started with them. We are doing trauma-informed stabilization therapy, custom formed to my specific needs. This works well for me and keeps me wanting to go to therapy. I don't really like DBT. I find it's too prescriptive, it doesn't get to the why of situations, and isn't built for autistic people. I have to reimagine everything I see in DBT, so I customize some of the tools, I use the language, and I just do my own thing. I don't want to disparage other people using it, however, it doesn't work for me. I go to peer support groups. The BPD Society is the best one, hands down, that I've been to. Not giving direct advice is crucial, as I don't trust most people, and I don't need strangers telling me what to do with my life. I use mindfulness through therapy. This has allowed me to understand the pathways of my emotions, because I have to trace the sensations back to the part responsible for them, so I can address what the part needs, and I can regain my full cognitive capacity. Without that, my efforts are as aimless as trying to get rid of the rats in my garden. You're solving the wrong problem. I have the ability to disengage and get time to regulate myself and anticipate future problems. Medications. My meds are finally good after 5 years of trying different things. My regime is intramuscular estrogen, max dose antidepressants, low dose stimulants, paracetamol for pain management. Once I decided out of the blue that I just wanted to stop taking pills, I did it overnight. The destabilization was intense. My partner was really not happy about that decision. And then I biked across Japan, and I did okay. There must be something in the noodles there. I've worked very hard to build strong relationships with several family members and recognize the need to maintain the relationship with my long-term live-in partner. I also have a longer-term partner in Halifax that I maintain a relationship with, and I try to keep friends as much as I can. In my environment, I'm not disabled. My home is a place where my ways are understood, if not always appreciated. My outbursts are always easier to deal with and less intense if I don't have the layer of humiliation and shame that comes with having a breakdown in public. When I am with people who are versed in what a meltdown looks like, I can go through what I need and come out after a shorter time and with less damage. Crucially to my good health are my habits. Exercise, biking, dodgeball, hiking, walking, yoga, workouts. My diet, I have to maintain my IBS symptoms because they'll derail me. I can't sleep, I can't regulate. Unfelt pain was a big factor in this. I didn't perceive that I was in chronic pain, but the painkillers helped me sleep. Connection. Loneliness tanks me quickly. I have to do some kind of socialization despite my desire to be isolated at all times. Relationships. I have to be attached to something. I can't free float or I'll feel completely unreal. I have to be engaged to good work, building things, hobbies, gardening, and play. I have to have peak experiences. There has to be something to look forward to. Trips, dancing, parties, festivals. I need to make something fun happen. Financial security is a big part of my habits. I have guarded my finances like a dragon to make sure I always have fuck you money and I'm never truly beholden to anyone. I maintain a truly paranoid amount of liquid assets to allow me to leave any situation permanently. That gives me so much grace going through those many struggles. I go through physical therapy, physio, mobility classes, massage, acupuncture, chiro sometimes, baths, stretching, somatic therapy, and pelvic floor therapy. I do talk therapy, couples therapy, sex therapy. I yap with friends. I do self-talk and I soothe myself. Medications are daily and intensive, and I have to manage my body image. Top and bottom surgery was crucial. Hormones, clothes, posture, all of it factor into seeing a person I can live with rather than feel numb about. And lastly, maintaining my context. I am happy within my context, my reality. I really am. I suffer when I think of what could be, the opportunity cost, and so on. I regularly test the limits of my context and often pay a heavy price for exceeding my limits. But I don't regret this. I regret wasting time thinking I somehow don't deserve my own life. So, have things gotten better? I like to think I'm over the hump and I'm on the way to becoming more normal, whatever that means. I've been able to work full time for the first time in 5 years. I feel more in the zone of thriving and less in the zone of surviving from day to day. I have less huge crashes, less panic attacks. I'm able to have difficult conversations without my parts getting in the way of me getting what I need. I have abandoned less relationships. I've started dating again, which is wonderful. I've been able to learn new skills, and I don't feel like the future is bleak or dependent on someone taking care of me. It's all a ton of work, and I don't get a day off, but I'm having more successes and less failures. I like that a lot. Living with BPD and everything else I struggle with is a disability. I can't work to my full potential. I can't trust myself to be reasonable, and I suffer greatly. The bit of money get back on my taxes help to offset some of the costs of treatment, but it is frighteningly expensive to be unwell. I will continue to be unwell for a long time, and I've come to peace with that. But I am slowly getting more of a grip on life. I have done so much introspection and framework building that I walk through life with utter conviction nowadays. I will never say that having illness is worth the trauma, but I recognize my accomplishments in overcoming the raccoons and rats that are in my way. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you so much, Mia. I really appreciated hearing your story. We have one question from the audience. I'm wondering if you'd be open to the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Does Mia feel psychedelics are beneficial for BPD symptoms? Do they feel the community may benefit from increased research into this subject? And also, where did you get your beautiful shirt?
The shirt I got from a consignment store on Main Street in Vancouver. That was a nice pick, if I do say so myself. Psychedelics is a fraught topic when it comes to therapy. It is not something to approach lightly. Um, I consider it a third or even fourth line therapeutic approach. I don't think there's much in the literature specifically on BPD and psychedelics. Um, Folks in the comments might be able to correct me on that one. However, I think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of other conditions, PTSD comes to mind, that different psychedelics have been used in the literature and in history and currently for treatment. So yes, I do think that there is uh, avenues to approach further research and experimentation, but it's not something that I would recommend lightly. I recognize fully the capability of any substance to cause further harm, and I wouldn't straight up recommend it. Also, I have no idea. Maybe it just works for me. I don't just have BPD, so I don't know.
Great.
But generally speaking, I like them. That's a true statement.
Fair enough. We have a lot of folks that are really resonating with your story. There was one person who said, I wanted to share thank you for your vulnerability and honesty. And so much of what you shared resonated with my own experience of life. And what a beautiful presentation. Um, and curiosity if there's any ways to connect with you, to maybe talk more about shared experiences. If you're,
Sure.
yeah, okay. And that would that be like email or Instagram? I can put it,
Yeah.
I put it in the chat for everyone, if you're or whatever you feel comfortable with.
Maybe we can connect together through you at a later
Sure.
time.
Yeah. So
Perhaps
if people
send Bailey an email and we can connect.
yeah, so I'll put my email. And then if you wanted to ask to how to connect with Mia, we can talk about that more.
That would be good. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so, oh, and thanks, Mom, for putting that in the chat, my email. Great. Well, I appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah.